What do you think, bearing all this in mind, that a young act or a young label could do to maximise their the profile they've got on the digital space? I mean, Karen, you sort of provide solutions, I guess, for
I was going to add something to what actually both of you said before I answer, but I think there's a problem with a lot of labels, and it's usually with majors just because of the nature of it, that they're like chasing a dragon, and a lot of them see online as a way to facilitate other things. So when it's something big on blogs, then Radio 1 might take notice. Whereas there's lots of other things that could be there, and I think the labels that do it right are the people that get creative and go, well, we might not be big on blogs. Like, I'm working on Liam Gallagher's new band. That's never going to go on Hype Machine, ever, in the world. And management kind of think it might. It's never going to go on Hype Machine. But there's a ton of other amazing stuff happening, and therefore you have to create the full picture of it. And it doesn't mean stuff isn't happening online, but it's just not happening on blogs. They're not, it's Oasis. They're never going to be written about on blogs. But it's not Oasis, it's a different band. But I think going back to what you've just said about breaking new bands, I think you have to be really specific about it, and it has to be about the band and what they stand for and what they are. And the amount of times I've had meetings where you sit there with an artist and somebody says, so we have to figure out what this artist is about. It's like, you shouldn't be having that meeting after you've recorded music and after you've hired people. It's like that should come that should come from the artist, well before I should be being told what the artist is about, not be in a meeting to decide it. And I think it happens a lot, and it's really hard because then you're just making something up, and people don't like stuff that's made up. It's not genuine and it's not real, and they probably won't invest in it. And I think that's the one thing that holds true across any new band, is it just has to be real from the start. I think the actual plan that goes forward is different for all of our bands. Like, we do hit blogs for some bands, and some bands we avoid blogs. We work on a band from Sunderland called Frankie and the Heartstrings, and we've never put music out onto blogs for them, ever. It's intentional. We've never put any music online for them. They just released their third single, was the first one that was available digitally on iTunes. It's very intentional. It was chosen to be that way. It's not really hurt them. We kind of went in with the confidence that it wouldn't hurt them, and it was all very intentional. It's not like we forgot to service the song to a blog, but it was a decision from the beginning, and it's a decision that came from who the band are, what they wanted to portray, where we wanted to put them, and I think that has to happen. It has to be about the band and what they stand for. And
did it end up on blogs?
No, it's never really been on blogs.
So it's just not that type of
They don't have any music on their MySpace. You have to email them to get music, and then they send you an email back saying, oh, well, I don't know if anybody in here knows them, but they'll email you back with some MP3s. But it's not, I mean, 3 blogs have posted it or something. It's not, I mean, blogs have posted the videos, which we've kind of put out, made available, but it's not, they don't kind of live in that space. And I think the idea there was that it's not disposable. And blogs are very disposable. There might be 5 posts today, they're gone tomorrow. And what did that music mean? Did you care about it? You listened to it, but did you download it? Did you invest in it? Did you even put the meta tags in your iPod so that it's not just track 1 by unknown artists? And it's like, if you make it a bit special, and if you make it about something, then if people are going to invest in it, they'll put the time in. I mean, before the internet, I mean, cassette tapes and things, you actually had to make them and own them and listen to them and put some effort in. And I think the attitude for Frankie and the Heartstrings, it is kind of an old school vibe like that, and they wanted people to actually invest. And if you didn't want to invest, then you're probably not the kind of fan that would buy into them anyway. And I think
what you're saying about being smart, about it, it's sort of this sort of conversation about blogs is sort of, you're right that it's all about it being, you're right that it's all about being a filter, but it's sort of that thing about what you do. It's like what you do with your music, and sort of like blanket marketing your music to blogs like isn't really the solution. And I remember when I was 18, I did a fanzine. I did a fanzine for years, and you used to sort of pick up everyone else's fanzine, and there would be the same bands, like same unsigned bands in that sort of fanzine scene that were reviewed everywhere. And then the few bands that sort of rose out of that scene were the bands that just sent 3 demos to like the 3 best fanzines. And I think in a way that's sort of, in that sense, nothing's really changed with sort of how blogs have replaced fanzines, which is how I think it's worked, to be honest. And I think as a journalist, the amount of bands I've been excited about that have been bands that haven't put any music online, and that's almost been an incentive to go check them out. Or there was a band called Shitty Limits, this hardcore band from the Midlands, who I was really excited about a couple of years ago, and it was because I'd heard like a couple of songs late night on Radio 1, and then I couldn't hear any more music because they wouldn't send their music to journalists, they wouldn't put their music online, and alright, it was sort of irritating, and I'm not sort of recommending that every band in the world does that, but it sort of made the music sort of matter a bit more, that it wasn't as disposable.
It is part of a solution then that to think very carefully about where you're going to put stuff and to try and engender this ownership from the fan of what you're doing. I mean, it's part of what you do.
Absolutely,
So, yeah.
I mean, most bands these days will, the first thing that a new band that's been signed will do is they'll do the free download.
Yeah.
Right?
Which was really revolutionary a year ago. Give us your email for a free download.
Yeah.
But it still happens, and there's bands, I'm working on a band called Giant Steps at the moment, and they used to be beggars, and they were signed to EMI, and then in the sort of cult, EMI dropped quite a lot of bands, and they were one of them, so they sort of regrouped, lost a member and recorded a new album. And the first thing they're doing is a free download, and again, it's visit the website, give us your email address, and you get a song in return, which is really simple and really obvious, but it still happens, and it still kind of works, because you've got to give us something back if we're going to give you a song. We're not just going to chuck it on the blogs and say, here's our song. It's disposable, So, and we're building slowly this, number of fans on a database. And eventually that database, when it gets to a healthy size, you can start telling them about the gigs they're doing, or maybe here's an EP that's coming, and, maybe eventually go and buy it on iTunes or whatever. So it does start off that way.
I mean, just to add to that, like, this is quite statistical and boring, but we work on a Swedish artist called Licky Lee, who's kind of like the biggest, bloggiest artist in the world, and we sent a free song out 2 weeks ago, maybe, and it was the hottest blog track in the world, and all that, but it was behind data capture on her website, so we sent the track out for blogs. It only got downloaded 2,000 times, and it had 80,000 downloads with emails. So there's an element there that if people care, they will come back and invest in the music. And again, it goes back to the confidence in the music. Like, your music has to be good to people, for people to get involved in it. But I think there is a misconception with blogs that you put it on a blog and 6 million people will download it. Like, keep in mind, there's probably only 20 people that look at every single one of these blogs, and they probably aren't interested in everything on it. And I think that happens a lot with labels as well, that if you put something on, like even Pitchfork doesn't get a huge amount of downloads because people, it's really passive. It's not going to a record shop and buying something and taking it home and listening to it. People just want to hear a bit of it. They might not like it. And I think there's a lot of fear there. Like, it might get on blogs. You should be much more worried about it getting on peer-to-peer if you're worried about a leak. But I think people think blogs are this kind of, these people that are like giving away free music, and they're horrible people for doing it. But yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it feels to me. I mean, it's funny. I feel like I'm wearing thin on the email for media.
Yeah,
route.
it's a bit done.
It's a bit. Yeah, it's a bit tired, and I just, new things are special, and when everyone's doing them, they're not special anymore. And there's only so many times as a music fan you're going to give your email for something. Now, if you take something like BDI that Karen is working on, that got a vast amount of downloads. Day one was about 90,000.
It hit 100,000.
100,000. Okay, so it hit 100,000, but the reason was that the messaging were incorrect in the run-up to it. So it's BDI, it's Liam Gallagher. We all know who he is, what his background is. There's a value attribution to hearing his new music, and people will happily give their email to download that brand new track, because that track is hot in the kind of shittest MTV VJ kind of a way. It's kind of that, it's a big track. If you're a new band and you're asking for email for media, people are probably sitting there going, I don't know who you are. I haven't established this value thing. And it's interesting what James said about the kind of restriction of access to stuff, because I think you value what you kind of can't get, right? If something's in short supply, I mean, is this not the conundrum around the music industry generally? It's kind of, music is now everywhere. It's easy to get. We can all share it illegally. So the value around it has gone down because it's in infinite supply. Something is in infinite supply. It has no inherent value. If you could pick up gold off the pavement outside, gold ain't worth much. So, and it's the same thing, whereas, you kind of nailed it, right? They're not sending you the track. They don't want to. So your immediate response is, I really want that track.
Yeah.
I want to hear that. And it's because you can't have it.